And I think that the groundwork of my mom's passing and losing that most important person in my life, that was the groundwork for this second wave. When I was older and I could be ready to be that person, I needed to be that more courageous person. Honestly, I needed to be, the groundwork was laid. So when that happened, is like, it all came together. And then I became I think I'm a more confident person. I'm more outspoken. For the first time in my life, I was called an angry Black woman on Instagram, some Instagram comments. And I'd never been called that before. Yeah, exactly.
Like, yes, I've arrived.
Yes,
Welcome to Black Cancer. I'm your host, Jody Ann. Our guest on today's episode is Sharon Eldridge, who lost her mother and her grandmother to cancer when they were both in their 50s. We chat about the ways to approach life with a looming fear that cancer may find you on your path. Sharon and I talk a lot about who she was and the decisions that she made during her mother's cancer journey. We explore what it means to just do the best with the information that you have at the time. Trauma and loss, that's also information, you know? And after going through her journey, Sharon, years later, has used that information to step into her own power, showing up differently for herself as she enters a new phase in her own life. I will say it was a joy speaking to Sharon, a person who just found the Black Cancer podcast on the internet months ago, way before I had anything going on. All I had was a domain and Instagram page, and she reached out to join this project. I'm so grateful to her, her story, and her gorgeous cats who jumped in and around the closet where Sharon recorded this conversation with me. Public service announcement. Don't forget to stay for the post show after the credits. Sharon and I speak about her mother's name, why she didn't share it, and the ways we relate to those who have passed on. Here's my conversation with Sharon. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to Black Cancer.
thank you, Jody Ann. It's good to be here.
It's really great to chat with you today and dig in a little bit more into your experience with cancer. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your mother. What was your relationship like? Who was she, is she to you?
My mother and I were really close. I was an only child, and my mother really doted on me. She maybe kind of spoiled me a bit. She really made it clear throughout my childhood, even through college, that I mattered so much to her. She told me she loved me all the time. She sent me care packages in college. She was always there. I could always talk to her. I could talk to her about anything. We could just chill and watch TV together. She loved shopping. We would go shopping together. She just like wore her feelings for me on her sleeve and made it clear that I was maybe the most important person in the world to her, and always made me feel loved. Yeah, that's who my mom was. And she loved other people too. She cared about other people. She was a social worker, and her coworkers loved her. The students she worked with loved her. Family loved her. She was a really lovable person.
Yeah. Did you feel that at the time? Because sometimes when I think back in my childhood, I see my mom a certain way, and then I try to put myself into like the 10-year-old, 15-year-old version of myself. And I don't know if I experienced her that way. What was your perspective of her kind of at that time in your, teenage years, your early 20s?
I think I took her completely for granted. It's like, yeah, just my mom, she loves me and she's all about me. Like, it's like my biggest fan. Like, yeah, it's just what it is. Of course. And like naturally, and of course, and she'll always be here. Obviously, I also thought that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was I could lean into that love and that support all the time. And I definitely took it for granted. And I showed it back as well, like at times, but again, looking back, not as much as I wish I had. I never, like as a kid, often you don't appreciate that love as something not guaranteed, maybe not always there. You just have it and you think that's normal and expected. And looking back, I wish I had been like, thanked her more, I guess, been more appreciative and thanked her more for all she did for me.
Yeah. And then it's like at the same time, you're a teenager, you know? When I studied adolescent health development, and when I think back to my relationship with my mom during that time, and, you know, similar to what you're saying, taking them for granted, you know, not really showing up for them in the way that they're showing up for you. I'm just like, yeah, that's developmentally appropriate.
That's reassuring. Okay, good.
Like, it checks out. I feel like shit about it, but the science tells me maybe that's okay.
That is so reassuring.
Yeah. And so, you know, as we think about your teenage years and your early 20s, can you describe a little bit of your life and who you were before your mom's diagnosis?
Oh, yeah. So, I finished college when I was 21, moved to Los Angeles to try to make it in TV, and was just kind of trying to build my life, build my career, make my way out there. It was very focused on myself. I mean, in college, you're saying like college through early 20s, just, yeah, very focused on myself, finishing school, getting all my projects done. And like, what's my future hold? What am I going to do in my future? And like really focused on myself. And it was, you know, stressful and like so many choices to make and paths to take and what do I do, but also really exciting. It was a really exciting time. And I've pretty much my whole life been unattached, not had a significant other, don't even have siblings. So like all my choices were just for me. Like I didn't have to plan around anybody else. There was no like a sibling sort of peer situation where I was like pulled to go somewhere where my sibling was. It was just me. And I knew my parents would support me wherever I went, whatever I wanted to do. So yeah, my life was very much about myself at that time. And I was just focused on my future and making my path.
Yeah. And then it all kind of gets disrupted when you hear about her diagnosis.
Yeah. I remember I was on the phone. It was probably a corded phone. This is in 2000. It was April 2000. And I was in my apartment in LA. I think I still was sleeping on the floor. I didn't have a bed yet.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was on the phone, like both my parents called me together, which that should have cued me because they'd never do that. And I think my dad was the one who said it, you know, your mom has stage 4 colon cancer. And I was like, okay. She had breast cancer 10 years before, and she had surgery, partial mastectomy, radiation, chemo, and she beat it. And so I thought cancer is something that you can beat. And I did not know what stage 4 meant. I did not know what it was. And that's like the critical piece of information I'm realizing my dad maybe thought I had, but I didn't have. I was 23 years old. Yeah, I was 22 at the time. And I didn't know enough about cancer to know about stages. And this is before Google, and I couldn't Google that. So I thought for a while, okay, she has cancer. Let me make sure I go back home. Like her birthday was in June, so I'll go back home in June. I think I went home in June, August, and then October, something like that. I went home every 2 months just to make sure they knew I was, you know, to see my mom, kind of just in case this was going to be a big thing, to help out as I could and just to show up for her, but never thinking I need to go back because these are the last few times I'm going to see her alive. I never thought that. But a little part of me was like, maybe it was a just in case sort of thing. So I thought, this is okay. This is hard, but like, we'll get through this. When they told me, my thought was, this is hard. We'll get through it. This is not a death sentence. It'll be okay. I'll just make sure I visit her a lot. That was my thought process.
Yeah, which makes sense because, you know, working backwards, she had already beat breast cancer 10 years prior. So you're 12, 13?
Yeah, I was like 12.
Was that your first experience with someone in your family having cancer at that time?
Actually, no, right? Like a year or so before that, my grandmother had stomach cancer. Like spring. Was it the same year? Wow. I think I was in 6th grade. I think it might have been 89. That might have been the same year. My grandmother also was diagnosed. I think it was months between diagnosis and when she died. And it might have been that same year, or at least within a year, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Might have been a few months later. I'm not positive. Yeah. So really, yeah, I had that really recent experience with my grandmother.
That's a lot at 12.
Yeah.
And so your grandmother passes quickly. Your mom goes through treatment for breast cancer, survives, and you in your teenage, you go to college and you kind of move forward. And yeah, I'm just like, as I'm listening to the story, I'm trying to put myself in that situation. It's just like, yeah, 20s. All right, girl, you got you got colon cancer. We got this,
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
this. We got this. We're going to do this. So that mentality is just, I can see it playing out. Can you share a little bit about you getting the news and up until the time when she passed? What was that experience like for you, in your relationship with her? And more specifically, like, how did you then realize that, oh, she might not beat this?
So I think I stayed in pretty good touch with them by phone. I would check in with her and stuff, but I was working at the time. I was a script coordinator on Felicity, not to brag or anything.
Yes.
Right. Very intense job, crazy hours. And so I was very focused on work. Stayed really busy, saw friends, focused on work, and kept in good touch with my mom and my dad, I think, at that time. And then again, planned trips like every 2 months to see her. So I came to see her in June. She was doing okay. That was the time my aunt was also there visiting her. We both went to her chemo appointment with her, just spent time together. And then I'd go back home, or go back to Los Angeles and work, and then go visit her, and felt like this is okay. And she would have kind of ups and downs during that. She'd have times where she was maybe end up in the hospital. I think that would happen, yeah, when I wasn't there for any of those times, but I would get the report she'd been in the hospital, or cancer has spread to her liver. She had surgery at some point. So she was definitely on a roller coaster. Her progress was definitely a roller coaster of ups and downs. She was diagnosed in April, and in September, she was talking about going back to work. Like, she was feeling good. She'd had that surgery. She thought things were pretty under control. And I was like, great, she's going to beat this. This is going to be like sweet. Is what I hoped and thought. And here we are. Just like the breast cancer, she's beating this. So this rough road for her, but she seemed to be like rising on it and coming out on top. And then I got a late night phone call from my dad in October, it's almost Halloween, and saying that your mom took a downturn and she's not going to come back from it. And then I went home like 2 days later, and was home till she passed away. Through the funeral and everything, I was home for 10 days. So all of that between that phone call and her dying was like 12 days.
Wow. Wow. When we spoke before, you had mentioned that airport story.
And I think it was in June, when my aunt was also there visiting, helping take care of my mom. Also, I felt, again, like I was like 23, and I guess I could have been of more use, but I was there just visiting. My aunt was there actually taking care of my mom.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I have my life. I can't put my life on hold. But my aunt did that for my mom. But anyway, I'm not going to feel guilty about that. I feel bad about it now, but I was 23 and was not helpful, just was showing up but not really being that helpful. Anyway, so my mom hugs me goodbye. My dad's about to take me to the airport, and I leave out the door, and I realized I've forgotten something. So I come back in, and I see my mom holding my aunt holding my mom, and my mom crying. And my mom hadn't been crying when I left. Like, we were, it was like sad to see me go, but we were saying like positive things, like it was loving little exchange, but we weren't a mess. And then when I came back in, when I wasn't there anymore, I feel like I saw her kind of let go and break down, and my aunt was holding her. So, and I didn't know she was crying because she missed me, wished I could stay longer, or if she didn't know when she'd see me again, or if she'd see me again. I don't know what exactly the tears were, but it broke my heart, and it felt like I was just seeing that vulnerability in my mom that I didn't often see, because she was pretty strong. She was not like a tough person, but she was very strong. She could endure so many things and faced so many things at work, and her personal life, and her health. I just saw her. She soldiered through so many things. She was very strong. And so to see her sort of break down like that was a little bit alarming. Like I'm so tender just talking about that, because I wasn't supposed to see that. That was her moment with my aunt. I was not supposed to see that. So that felt kind of weird. And then I think that was June. And then this is probably September. I was at work. My neighbor, who I didn't know had my phone number, like found my phone number. She called me, and her mother had died of cancer some years earlier.
Mm.
I might have found this out later. And she'd been helping take care of my mom and helping my parents and checking in and stuff. So she called me, and I wish I remember her exact words. And it was just the most, not nosy neighbor at all. It was like truly helpful and not like butting in and not trying to control anything and not being like, well, not shaming them for anything, but saying, I want to make sure you know how serious this is. And I'm not sure your parents have told you. And I want to make sure you know, so you don't have any regrets. You can make your decisions accordingly. But like, your mom is not in the best, it's not in good shape. Like, things are, whatever she said, things are serious. And I was like, oh, okay. And I immediately called my mom, and I was like, yeah, what's really up? And like, she started crying and saying, we didn't want to worry you. I can't remember all that was said, but I feel like truths got told, like things like barriers were broken down, and I was really grateful for that. And I think that helped prepare me for that late night phone call I got from my dad.
So do you feel like you've reconciled with, here are the tools, here's the perspective, here's who you were then, and looking back on that now, have you reconciled, or how do you think about how you handled it at that time?
I try to have grace for myself from back then. I think I handled it as well as I could with the information that I had. But I also know I had an unwillingness to drop what I was doing, to leave my job, to take a leave of absence, to do whatever. Like, that was not a question for me. And for some other children, that might have been like, oh, well, like, I'm not going to live in LA now, or I'm just going to put this on hold. I need to just like quit my job and move back home. Some other people, even at my age, might have done that, and I did not choose to do that. And that feels selfish to me, and I'm not proud that I did that. And I think it's also the industry I was working in. I was working in television, and you leave a job in television, if you want to come back, you may not be able to. Like, it's so competitive. And so I worked my way in there, and I'm sure I knew deep down if I left, I wouldn't be able to. I might not be able to come back, or I didn't trust I'd be able to come back. And I'd been there less than a year at that point. No, yeah. I'd been, oh, not sure. I'd been there 10 months when they called me about her diagnosis. Yeah. So I'd been there, less than a year. I didn't think that she would pass away. If I had known that she was going to die, that she had terminal cancer and she had 6 months to live, I might have made a different choice. But because I thought she would make it, I thought she would beat it, I made the choice that I made, again, with that information that I had.
Yeah. What did your mom do when her mom was going through her thing?
I'm trying to remember. They had a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
My grandmother was 16 when she had my mom, and she was not the most mature person, even like as an adult, not the most mature person. And they had kind of a tumultuous relationship. And my grandmother would ask my mom for money, and my mom didn't feel like my grandmother respected her, and she had a lot of for that. But I think when my grandmother became ill, my mom wanted to show up and take care of her. In fact, like, it was my spring break of 6th grade. My grandma lived in Huntsville, and she lived in a condo my parents bought for her. And my mom and I were staying in the condo, taking care of my grandmother in those last days or weeks. I think it was a couple of weeks. So my mother was very dutiful to her mom when her mom was sick. And I think, wanted to show up, wanted to have that time. I mean, sadly, fortunately, it was probably more pleasant in a way, because my grandmother wasn't talking that much. I could not talk that much. I could not fight. I really couldn't fight.
This is wonderful. We're not fighting at all.
You're finally docile, and you can listen to me for a change. Is probably what my mom was thinking a little bit. I mean, sad to lose her, but
I know.
But they didn't have this nurturing, great relationship. But my mother showed up for her, took care of her in the end, and they loved each other.
Yeah.
But it was a fairly dysfunctional relationship. And my grandmother, this also plays into my thinking of my prospects for my mom's prospects of cancer. My grandmother smoked maybe her entire life, and used sweet and low, which is proven to cause, I think, cancer in laboratory rats or whatever. I mean, it's saccharin.
Yeah.
So we thought, of course, she got cancer, and because her body was so polluted by the smoking and the saccharin, she wasn't going to have a lot of defenses to fight it. Whereas my mom was a pretty healthy person her whole life, for the most part. And so I thought, in each of these cancers, it made sense for her to be both of them because she's otherwise really healthy. She doesn't really abuse her body. She doesn't smoke. She doesn't have these risk factors. So she should be fine. It's like another difference between my mom's cancer and my grandmother's cancer to me, and probably to my mom as well.
Yeah. So when you think about your grandmother's story, who's really different than your mom's story, how does that impact you? How do you even see your own health and your mortality and, even just like your health more broadly?
It's interesting because my mother grew up partly with her aunt. My grandmother lived with her sister and her sister's family when my mom was really little. And her sister is older, has a daughter who smokes. Both of them, picture of health. All grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. And I think that I don't know if they've done studies on this, but there's a lot of risk factors for people Black folks who grew up in the South at these times, because they sometimes lived in areas that were more polluted. Apparently there's like some nuclear pollution in that area. I know very little bit about this, but there's, one strain of the family riddled by cancer, another strain came from the same place, are totally healthy, even though one of them smokes. And one thing my mother and my grandmother had in common with their cancer was that they were both very young. They're both in their 50s, late 50s when they got it. And for myself, I think, well, both of them were born in Huntsville. So they have the risk factors that come from being Black women in segregated Huntsville, Alabama. So I don't have that going for me. I don't smoke. My mom drank for a bit. She had I would describe it as a minor and short-lived alcoholism issue, or alcoholism, period. I don't abuse alcohol. I drink sometimes. I grew up in Virginia now, and then I was in Los Angeles and Portland. I feel like I've lived in healthier environments for my body than they did, and I have better habits. But I just wonder how much is genetic, because again, this didn't touch the other sister and her progeny. It didn't touch them, this cancer. Cancer has never touched that strain of the family. But for some reason, it's gone through this line. And so I almost feel like I'm next. I see it coming my way, like hit this one is going to hit me next. Part of me thinks that way sometimes. And then I wonder if it's going to hit me in my 50s, because it got both of them in their 50s. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Big question.
How do you cope with that? Like you described it, to me earlier, as having this lasting fear of getting cancer. What is it like to live with that?
I compartmentalize and don't think of it most of the time. But some things you'll never catch me doing, like microwaving and plastic. I will never do that. I avoid they say you're not supposed to. No one is supposed to stand in front of the microwave when it's on, but I especially try to make sure I'm nowhere near it. So I just try to do little lifestyle things that will decrease my general risk of cancer. I try to drink water. I try to eat vegetables. I try to exercise. I try to keep my body healthy and stay away from what are, to me, like obvious risk factors. Also, like artificial sweeteners. Like I don't use toothpaste with artificial sweeteners. So like the plastics, the sweeteners, all that stuff, I try to religiously stay away from, and then otherwise just try to keep my body healthy, and then I just don't think about it.
Yeah,
that's how I cope. Compartmentalize.
Listen, I hear that. But you know what, just to like on the flip side of that, right? Like when I got my diagnosis, I was so mad. And I remember in the doctor's office, I was vegan for 4 years. I've run marathons. I do and I'm listing all of these things that what makes my body healthy. Yeah. And I kept saying, I was like, and me, you're talking to me about being paralyzed because of a tumor. I don't want to say enraged, but I think what shattered in my head is that life is about cause and effect.
Yeah.
I was just like, sometimes some shit just happens. After that outburst that I had in the office, I just kind of released myself and like wanting to protect myself in a way that, did I do something wrong? Like, did I make this happen? Is it my fault And I was just like, fuck it. Doesn't matter. Sometimes shit happens. And I just didn't want to, in my brain, like come up with cause and effect.
Seems like there probably wasn't in your case.
And just like sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. And it could be maddening trying to figure it out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so like, you know, I too also have this lasting, like just kind of fear of getting cancer again that kind of runs in the back of my head. Like, oh, something hurts right here, I have cancer. And the way I rationalize it is, as someone who has a high engagement with the healthcare system because of my history,
Mm-hmm.
I will probably have a cancer diagnosis again because I'm more monitored than someone who never goes to the doctor.
Mm.
Like when I think about your story, like because of your mom, because of your grandmother, you have, or maybe have a higher engagement with the healthcare system or think about it differently than other
A
people.
little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I had to be screened. I had to get a colonoscopy earlier than most people, and then mammogram earlier than most people because of the family history.
Yeah. That's why sometimes it's important to, I don't know, it's hard. Like sometimes you want to run away from these things, and sometimes you have to actually run towards it to help protect yourself in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, and what you're saying about cause and effect is making me think. Like I feel like I made an agreement with myself that I want to increase my likelihood of not getting it, but I know I can't prevent it by anything I do. I can't necessarily prevent it. And so I've made this agreement, like, here are the things I'll do. Avoid, microwaving plastics, avoid these sweeteners, and like some, random things. And I'll generally try to keep my body healthy. That's all I'm doing. I'm not going to try to kill myself to not get cancer. I'm not going to try to I'm not going to cut out sugar. I know sugar is a quote unquote toxin. I get too much enjoyment from it. So I still want to live. I still want to enjoy foods. I want to enjoy activities. I want to imbibe. I want to have wine, beer, like celebrate. I want to live more or less normally and not sacrifice so much, because then if I were to sacrifice all this stuff and then still get cancer, I'd be pissed. Like you were pissed.
Yeah. Just like, damn, I could have just been sitting at home watching TV, not running all these damn marathons.
Yeah.
And it's the way the doctors rationalize it for me, and I hear it somewhat in your story as well, is that, no, it's because you've done all these things that your body's more prepared to manage it. Because you're strong, quote unquote, like air quotes here, but physically strong, like I've created a strong body.
Yeah.
That the damage that the surgery does to my spine and the paralysis that I'm facing, I can manage it better than if I was unhealthy.
I think that's really true.
And in your situation too, like, okay, I want to have just a clean body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if something happens, maybe I'm better prepared to manage it, but at least you're just at least trying to like set yourself up in what you can control.
Yes.
And that seems just very mentally healthy in general. Here's my lane. I'm going to do these things.
Yes. Yes. I also feel like just respect for our bodies is important. It's a struggle sometimes, especially if we feel like our body has betrayed us. I don't know if that's what you feel or not, but I know some people feel like for various reasons, various ways, their bodies have betrayed them. But I think having a relationship with your body can be important in combating disease, maybe in fending it off sometimes to an extent, and in combating it, to have the integration between your mind and your body. Because I think people who abuse their bodies because they don't really see their bodies or respect their bodies, then I think bodies can become breeding grounds for disease, and it's hard to combat them because there's not that agreement with your body to fight together or whatnot. So I try to have that. I don't know if my mom had that. I don't know if my grandmother had that. I'm doubting my grandmother had that, but I don't know. And again, she died when I was 11, so I really didn't get a chance to know her very well. We were not close.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to cultivate that. And I'm trying to work with my body, but then I feel like if I am in touch with my body, and then if I do get cancer, I'll be like, what happened?
We talked about this.
Yes, you failed me. We had an agreement. I was treating you well. I was respecting you. How did you get this? It'll be a struggle, but maybe a different kind of struggle if that happens.
No, I totally hear that. I was like, oh, we talked about this. What's going on here? But, when I think about what you're saying around this mind-body connection too, it's also of where we put trauma and how trauma shows up mentally, how it shows up in our body, and how it shows up over time. where did you put your pain, your trauma from your mother's passing, and why do you think it kind of bubbled up and surfaced after the breakup that you told me about?
I tried to cry a lot. I definitely wasn't like, no, it's fine. Like, and I remember I didn't cry much at the funeral because I was crying for the 9 days I was home before the funeral. So I was just receiving everything, processing, crying constantly. So just letting everything out through tears, just talking with people. I think I took some walks, maybe I exercised a little bit. So I think I externalized it. I didn't try to keep anything in because I was around people who were safe to talk about it with, friends,
That's amazing.
neighbors. Yeah, my dad. So I talked it out a lot. I sort of let it out in that way. Including, even if I was angry, the sorrow, the anger, the everything, I had people I could talk to about it. So I think I let it out in those ways. I also led my life a little bit differently after that. I think I became funnier. I think a lot of people, that happens with a lot of people. I became funnier, became more like edgy, like maybe had like a new dark side, or like maybe a dark humor, more of a dark humor to me, and became maybe a little bit more of a risk taker, maybe a little bit more daring, but still being socialized as a woman in the 80s, and growing up in the 80s and 90s, being socialized as a girl. I think there is some things I didn't attempt, conversations I was way too afraid to have. Definitely would cry if people yelled at me. I don't know if I still do that now. But anyway, when I got dumped by my first and only relationship in my life, I was 39 years old. She dumped me. I was 40 by that time. Was dumped in 2018. It was after that, though. I think, again, I was telling you in our previous conversation, I had the foundation of that, like, everything can be taken away. The bottom can drop out. You can lose the most important person in your life. That can happen at any time. And then on top of that, to have tried to keep this relationship alive, to try to show all my love and try to be so devoted and try not to rock the boat, try to keep this person, that they can still drop me, made me realize how fear-based a lot of my behavior in my life had been. Even if I had maybe like a surge of fearlessness or more risk taking after my mom passed away, that quieted down in my 30s, and I became more fearful. I operated out of fear, I think, way too often. And so after that breakup, I was like, well, fuck it. Who am I trying to protect by not having hard conversations, by not confronting people on stuff? Who am I trying to protect? It's not helping me. If this can happen, it's like the worst thing I could imagine happen anyway. What am I avoiding stuff for? And not like I'm going to go around like, fuck everybody. I'm going to tell everyone what I think of them. But, if something was making me unhappy and like almost making me sick or like anxious, I started to say something. I started to address it. If it was a person like, hey, I don't like our dynamic, I don't like the way this is going, I would address stuff. I would speak on things for my own sake. And I would not put other people's potential feelings above my own as much. And I think that the groundwork of my mom's passing and losing that most important person in my life, that was the groundwork for this second wave when I was older and I could be ready to be that person I needed to be that more courageous person, honestly, I needed to be. The groundwork was laid. So when that happened, it was like, it all came together. And then I became I think I'm a more confident person. I'm more outspoken. For the first time in my life, I was called an angry Black woman on Instagram, some Instagram comments. And I'd never been called that before. Yeah, exactly.
Like, yes, I've arrived.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's who I'll be. That's who I am, because why am I being silent for anybody else's sake? Why am I being silent on stuff? And this is on my own behalf, but also on other people's behalves. Like, I lived in Portland forever, and if I'd see a Black person being harassed by a white person, if I just see like stuff going down, or like a woman of any color being verbally abused by her boyfriend, whatever it was, I was like kind of there, like with the phone ready to say something. Like, I just will say something really easily now. Before I would be kind of scared silent often. And now I will say something. I'll just put myself out there. I'll take that risk on my own behalf and on someone else's behalf, because what am I going to lose? I was so afraid of losing something before, and I'm not afraid of losing something now.
That's powerful.
Thank you.
You stepped into a whole dimension of power.
I guess I have. Yeah.
So as we talk about identity too, now stepping into, oh, you gonna call me an angry Black woman? All right, bet. Like, because that even being a sign of that transition, because no one would have called you still a Black woman. Everybody wants to call Black women angry, and you're like,
Right.
no, I'm gonna give you a reason to, right? And
Yeah.
so, in thinking about identity, you're biracial.
Mhm.
Your mother's Black woman from the South. Your father's white. You know, as we think about your mom's presence in your life, you know, can you share a bit about like how identity, your racial identity, and being biracial fits into losing your Black Southern mother?
Yeah. She was a big part of my identity. Part of it was like just me being seen with her. Like if I was out with my mom, I knew we made sense to anybody who saw us. I didn't think about that a lot, but if someone asked me or if it came up, or I would know people's reactions to us or people's lack of reactions to us. We fit, we go together. You can see resemblance, age, there's an age differential. This is my mother, it's very clear. When I go out with both parents, and I grew up in Virginia, actually right near where I live now, it was like sometimes looks and sometimes, oh, like whatever. But with my mom gone, I still have all that she passed down to me. I still have all the appreciation of all the music that she shared, that she would play, the things that were important to her, and like her references. Like I have a lot of her, and I carry that always. But going around with my dad, minus my mom, I think I mentioned my dad and I. This is way before my mom passed away in 95. We took a bike tour in Germany for 2 weeks. Yeah, I think it's 2 full weeks. And I found out at the end of it, I was 17 years old and my dad was like in his 40s. Someone thought we were a couple and I wanted to vomit. I was like, how? What? That blew my mind.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and I'd have a friend come over, like a white friend, come to spend the night. My dad would take us to the video store. We'd be browsing for videos. And there was one time someone thought that my dad was my friend's dad, not my dad. So my dad and I don't make a lot of sense, or people do not assume the correct relationship when my dad and I are out and about together.
Yeah.
When it was the family, I think it made sense because I look kind of like, a shade in between the two of them, whatever. As a family, we made sense. My mom and I made sense. My dad and I just together, people clearly don't know what to make of us. People don't know what we are. I still am myself. I have my whole identity. It's in me. And I know who I am, but I'm just aware of what's not being telegraphed to others, that there's not an accuracy in how we're perceived to other people when my mom is not part of the package and the scene.
So how does that impact you, especially in the context of why she's not there?
I guess it just makes me be like, I don't care what people think. I try to shrug it off and like not think about it. And then it's also a reminder of that parent who was like the most painful parent for me to lose. My dad and I have never been that close. We're still not even close now, even though I've moved back here to be closer to him because he's my last surviving immediate family. It's a reminder like, this is who I've got. Okay. This is what I have. And so that's why I try to think about it too much. And the other weird thing is that my dad remarried a few years after my mom died. And he married a very dark-skinned Black woman, much darker than my mom. And so when I'm out and about the two of them, I'm also aware people are, or I look nothing like her.
Yeah.
Especially with white people, it doesn't even matter if you don't even look like me. They're still assuming I'm her daughter. I know white people are assuming that I'm this woman's daughter, even though we don't look alike at all. So that's something I'm aware of. Like, so either people are like, oh, like, or they're like, oh yeah, that's an interracial family. That's their daughter. Like, I'm aware that people are probably assuming that that's my mother. And when I was not a big fan of hers, that would bother me, but we've kind of made our peace and it doesn't bother me as much now. But for most of the 20 years they've been together, I was like, no, it's not my mother. Hope no one's thinking this is my mother. It's not my mother. I would be like really angry about it. Really grumpy about it.
I want to see you and you're like in your quarter life crisis, 25, 26. You're not my mother.
No, I better think that she is. She's not.
And then you're like, I don't care what people think. I don't care what people. Not my mother. So, in adulthood now, like, how does your mom show up for you? How is she still present with you, you feel?
I think she's still present in the way I just, for no good reason, care about children. When I was in Portland, I worked for a nonprofit. My last 3 years in Portland, I worked for a nonprofit. It was a youth orchestra. And I got so much out of just being around those kids, even when they were being weird, complaining about the sandwiches that I'd gotten a volunteer to make, even when they didn't appreciate my efforts. Yes, like, do you want to make your own sandwich, Timmy? Like, I would like tease them. We would play. I just so enjoyed children, and that was like a hallmark of my mother. She really enjoyed children. She was a school social worker. She would volunteer at her church's Vacation Bible School every year. She really enjoyed just talking with children. And I think I carry that in me because I certainly don't get that from my dad. My dad is not that person. I try to carry my kindness and my strength, my toughness, my soldierness. I carry that from my mom. I carry that forward because I've definitely been confronted by health challenges, career challenges, personal life challenges, emotional challenges. And I feel like I have my mom's strength in me to face that. I feel like she handed that down to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
So for folks who are listening who might share your experience in some way or your identities, or there's some part of your story that resonates with them, what do you want to share with them? What do you want to say to them?
I would say to them, you'll get through it. And also I'm thinking of like how I got through it. I got through it with friends. Friendship has always been important to me. I also got that from my mom. My mom had lifelong friends, and I'd see her invest in her friendships her whole adulthood. And I think that's what got me through. Like I said, I was able to process this stuff, release this stuff with friends. So, and I was able somehow to still be like a decent friend through that. I developed those friendship skills. So even when I was going through my trauma, I still could kind of be a friend and like receive the love of my friends, but also like still show up for my friends. So I would say invest in friendships. If you're having an experience like mine, invest in your friendships, lean on your friends, open up to your friends, don't bottle anything up. And then if you have a father who moves on, who gets remarried, don't be gaslit and don't let people negate your emotions. That was a huge betrayal for me, is that my dad didn't act like it was a big deal that my mom had passed away and I should just accept this person automatically. And no space was made for me and where I was at, because my dad can find another wife. I can't find another mother. So I would say, don't let people invalidate your feelings. Some of the experiences like mine, which includes being an only child, you may find yourself alone in that boat. Your other parent may abandon you and you're alone in that boat mourning this parent of yours or whatever it is. Don't let anyone invalidate your feelings and like lean just so heavily on your friends. That's what got me through. My family didn't really show up for me in the loss of my mom. Not really, not long term. My family didn't show up that much. My friends did though. That would be my personal advice.
Listen, I'll take that, because even in listening to that and reflecting on my own experience, the way friends showed up for me, I just remember crying sometimes in the hospital, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that love had these possibilities, that people could just show up for you, people who have no obligation to you in that kind of familial sense. And that also came with a lot of guilt around shit, I don't know if I would do that for other people. And that's something in the past few years that I've been working towards, of how can I pay that forward in some way? How can I allow my experience to open me up to show love and show up for people that maybe I just I just met them a couple times, like how can I be a better friend to people that maybe I don't even know like that,
Yeah.
When you think about, what you're sharing with folks who even share your own experience, do you find yourself, relating to people differently, supporting people differently that maybe you wouldn't have been able to without that trauma and experience that you've had?
Oh, absolutely. In the summer of 97, I had an internship in LA, and there's, I think, like 6 or 7 of us, and there are 4 women. And one of them, her name is Brenda. She went on to be a successful TV writer. Her mom was diagnosed with cancer. This may be why I feel guilty about it. her mom was diagnosed with cancer. Maybe she knew how serious it was because she got the phone call. This is 97. So she got called us at the apartment. She went back. She left the internship and she went back there to be with her mom, and her mom passed away. And I remember, like, even when she got that phone call, like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to comfort this person. I knew how important my mom was to me, but I didn't know what it was like for my mom to be on death's doorstep, like her mom was. Like we knew even in that phone call to let her know that her mom was like going to die. I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't know how to comfort her. And I think even now, I just in my wisdom of having gone through this trauma, it's not even about what you say. It's not about phrases. It's about just maybe looking the person in the face, saying, "Are you okay?
Yeah.
You want to just sit?" Like making sort of offers. And I would say, I don't know if this phrase was said to you a lot, but like, is there anything I can do, or like, what can I do? I think sometimes that's overwhelming. That's
yes, I cannot assign 20 people responsibilities here.
Yes, right?
What can I do? Jesus, too many decisions I have to make right now.
Right? Or is there anything I can do? Yes. I don't know what it is, but sure.
Figure it out.
Because I think people go to that, it's like, I want to be helpful. I want to make sure they know. I want to make sure they know I want to be helpful, but they don't understand what the onus that puts on the person you're asking, who doesn't have the strength, brain space,
yes,
is just trying to survive. So I definitely, I don't think I said that then, and I definitely do not ever say that now. I've learned that much.
You know what opened and changed my experience? This was 6 days after I got diagnosed. I was with a friend and I was just crying. And she goes, "What do you need? What do you need?" And okay. I was then but the rage was rising in me. What do I need? What I need? I need to not have cancer right now. Like, what I need, what I need. And she keeps asking, and she goes, "I know someone who's paralyzed. Do you want to talk to her?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to talk to your friend who's paralyzed." And so, and she was like, "Well, what can I do?" And I just kind of broke through. I was like, "You know what I need right now? I need somebody to clean my house." And I was just listing all these like super boring, mundane things that I think what I was trying to get at is I have to deal with this huge crisis. I have to also manage my life. Yeah. And so when I had this outburst, I guess like a lot of change happens to me in outbursts. But I was like, I need somebody to clean my house. And she's like, "I got it." And she hired someone and came and cleaned my house for 5 hours.
Wow.
And, yeah,
she was on it.
Yes. And she's like, "We'll pay," like her and her partner, like they paid for it. And one, like getting someone to pay for something for me was just like very hard as a Black person. Like, no, I got this. I can do it myself. Yep. And I literally was in my apartment watching this woman clean. And I was like, that's it. It doesn't have to be some big act. It can be something super tiny, super mundane, something that just helps you manage your life. Yes. That is how people can show up. And I need people to just assign themselves to just thinking, what would I need right now? Or what can Jody Ann like not have to think about right now? Yes. And I think that's where it's at. Like, sometimes cancer is this big thing, and yes, it can ravage our lives, and we're still people. Yeah. So just use some common sense and be empathetic of how do you show up in life right now with this context of cancer and mortality and all that. That's just part of us,
I feel like that's where like the casseroles or like all the food at wakes or after funerals, where that came from. Like, we have basic human needs, like we need to eat, we need to grocery shop, and if people take away our need to grocery shop or our need to cook for ourselves, which I think, and again, I feel like people who bring that stuff either are doing this as part of the culture or because they've been through it themselves. And they know, like, I didn't have the strength to cook, so here's this for you. Like when it happened to me, I couldn't go grocery shopping. I couldn't cook, so obviously I know this is what you need. And yeah, I feel like things like cleaning the house, grocery shopping, and food, those are like automatic go-tos. But then there's the element of how much do you know this person? Do you know what they eat? Because you don't want to bring food that's not going to be used. The person doesn't eat. So, and I think, again, that's where I feel like the investment in those friendships and like knowing your friends, knowing what they do and don't like, where you can seamlessly come in and be like, this is happening. can I go grocery shopping for you? Yes. And then hopefully with minimal input, they just know what you need. And so it doesn't become, you have to manage their grocery shopping trip.
Yeah.
People who know you well will know automatically what you eat, what you need, what you would benefit from, because that's the ideal, is you're being brought food that is food that nourishes you, that you like, and you're being brought groceries that are products that you use. That's when, like, I feel like kind of cocooned and taken care of, versus like people are throwing these nice gestures at me, but like food I don't eat, products I can't use. And it's like, thank you, but no, thank you.
I love that, like, element of like, can you seamlessly just support me? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking me. Yeah, thanks for allowing me this space. I appreciate it.
And so I always think anytime we share our stories or chat with people, there's always an opportunity to give and elevate other things that make us happy or comfort us in some way. Mm-hmm. And so if you have recommendations for our listeners on someone they should know, something that they should read, and something that they should listen to.
The first person that comes to mind, listen to, that they should know and be aware of is Erica Hart. She is an educator. I follow her on Instagram. She's prolific on Instagram. I think she uses she and they pronouns. Sorry. Okay. Also a cancer survivor, double mastectomy cancer survivor, who just kind of like feel like taps us on the shoulder about stuff that we even as Black people like celebrate, like Beyonce and whatnot. She brings a thoughtful critique to a lot of things and just reminds us of that we're not a monolith, reminds us of trans lives, reminds us of fat phobia, all kinds of things, all kinds of awarenesses. And then I think she educates on the subject of sex. Erica Hart, someone you should know, someone you should listen to. The podcast called The Read.
Oh, yes.
That brings me a lot of joy and laughter and comfort, and just like, I'm just like nodding my head a lot. It's fun, but it's also like pretty real. It's doesn't hold back. They're just being themselves. They're just being their Black selves in America. And I just love that so much. And read, my thought I was thinking about this author the other day, because I think the Black authors that we talk about all the time are Zora Neale Hurston, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, Alice Walker, like the big ones. And they're fantastic. But a Black writer who no one hardly ever talks about, who just was out there writing fiction, is Gloria Naylor.
Ooh.
Gloria Naylor. I read her in college for the first time. The book was called Something Hills, and it was about sort of this class division within this Black community, the people who lived, if I'm remembering correctly, up on this hill versus people who lived like down below, and their interaction. So like Black upper class and Black working class, all about, and there were no white people in this book as far as I remember. And that was just like a revelation to me in college, to read a book about all Black people and no white people. And it's about class, not race. Like a book about Black people that didn't involve race, but class. It was, and he's a very good writer from what I remember, like uses language really well, because I feel very curmudgeonly and old right now saying this, but so many of these books written these days are not written well. They're artless. It's artless language. And she used language well. She constructed sentences well. She painted word pictures well. So Gloria Naylor.
Yes, I just Googled it because, people forget that they have access to the internet. Like, what can I do about racism? I'm like, the internet. Okay.
Right? Exactly.
Gloria Naylor, last name Naylor, and the book is Linden Hills.
Linden Hills.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I got to check this out.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jody Ann. I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm so glad. I'm excited to listen to this podcast to hear other people's cancer stories, because I really only know mine.
Yeah.
No one else in my Black family has had cancer except my mom and my grandmother.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward. So the cancer in Black people has been like, as obscure to me in my life, except my personal life, as it has for a lot of our listeners. So I'm really excited is the wrong word, but I will be listening in to hear other people's stories, because the more stories like we know, the more we can share and support our families and friends. So I think that's really great what you're doing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And that's the show. Black Cancer was created, produced, and edited by me, Jody Ambury. Thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing your story. To make sure that this and other Black Cancer stories become center to how we talk about cancer, you can like, subscribe, rate, and please leave a review wherever you find your podcast. Find us online at blackcancer.co and on Instagram at _black_cancer. Trauma comes with endless wisdom for ourselves and those around us. Tell someone you know about Black Cancer. I want to ask you about one quick thing and then I'll let you go. We just spent an hour chatting about your mom and you never said her name.
Yeah, I didn't. Huh. I get maybe like our, like knowing, wow. I think it's my identification of her as my mother, not as her as like a citizen and a person in the world, even though I did refer to her work. I referred to her work and how she showed up for other people. So I wasn't like I only think of her as my mother and not a person outside of me. It's also because I know her name.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, it's just like implied. I know it. So like
know
it's
it.
gonna be known.
What does that mean to be able to be with someone, to talk about someone and like never have to identify them by name to somebody else who doesn't know them? I don't know.
It's not the same, but it makes me think of how you can, I know, I don't know if this happens to you, but I can get into like long conversations with strangers, like half an hour, 45-minute long conversations with strangers, and we never get each other's first names. But we are like so together.
And then you're like sitting on the train with them, you talk to them for 45 minutes, and you're like, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I know, like, this is the point where I could ask their name, but then like, maybe I just like won't, it's okay. Like, and like, does it matter? I guess the question is like, does it matter?
I don't know.
I mean, my mom's identity and personhood does matter to me, but her actual name, I guess in the context of this conversation, I guess obviously didn't seem to matter to me.
Yeah.
And obviously had you said it, what was your mom's name? I would have been like, no, it's this. I would have been like, why didn't you know that? I would have like hid that information.
And I think about that, like, do I want to say, oh, what was her name? I don't know if that matters. It's in some traditions, right? You want to call in the names of your people.
Yeah.
And in other traditions, or even just outside of culture to traditions, it's like, I don't even call my mom by her name. I call her mom.
That's another reason. Like, yeah, I didn't call my mom that.
You know? And so, and I think I have a lot of friends who don't even know my mom's name. Maybe they just call her mom, or like a Miss Beery, or, you know, by her last name.
Yeah.
I think it adds a level of complexity to just be with someone, talk about someone, and keep that within you, and not needing to, her name was like, it feels like it takes it a little bit out of your own story because you don't call her by her name.
Right. Yeah, I think your first question was about her, but like my relationship with her, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it was like, tell me about your mother, like what she did, blah, blah, blah. If it had been like asking for like bio data on my mom, I might have been like, yeah, her name was, actually, I didn't, you know what, I'm lying. I might not even said that. I might have said she grew up in here, she went to this. I don't think I still would have said her name.
And I think that's special. Like, you hold that. I'm not asking you to share it. Right.
But like, it doesn't come up. It just doesn't
naturally come up because your relationship to her is beyond what was written on her birth certificate.
And even what's on her gravestone. I actually visited her gravestone the first week I was here. It's like staring at her name. Like, yeah, this was her name. This was not like who she was.
Yeah.
this is her name. But then that's contrasted with like the importance of like say their names and all these, like with the people died at the hands of the police. We want to say them. We don't want to forget their names. But then I think since this is a whole different context and it's so about relationship and the growth and the lessons and stuff, the name doesn't seem as important. I don't think I even mentioned anybody's name. I don't think I mentioned any people except Felicity.
But, you know, I was at a Black Lives Matter march, and someone, when they were talking about Breonna Taylor, like say her name, they were just like, she was a person.
Yes.
And that just, it hit me in my chest. She was a person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough.
Yeah.
And I think that what underlies, like, say her name, like she's a person. And then, you know, right. Thinking about your mom is like, she's your mom.
Yeah. Like also a person. I mean,
she's a person.
Breonna Taylor, like versus like a statistic or like a Black woman was killed, because then it's just like, she just doesn't have a face. If she doesn't have a name, she doesn't have a face. So in that case, naming those people is so important to keep their personhood, to remind us that they are human beings, they are people. But then in talking about this sort of extracted experience, it's about my mom's personhood for sure, my grandmother's personhood and mine, but it's like, it's sometimes only only the name of the storyteller is known. In this case, like I'm the storyteller of them and my name was known, but their individual names were not known.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then if I'd opened like, Yvette Eldridge was born a long time ago, it would have felt like cold and British to me somehow. If I like started
just like randomly just British. It's just British.
Like so formal. Yvette Eldridge lived a long life. No, whatever. It seems weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, her name was Yvette.
Yvette Eldridge.
Yes.
She's with us.
She's still with us. She's still around. Definitely.
And your cat that's been running around the closet.
Yes. They are so nosy.